What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Babbles Nonsense podcast. We have Meenu back today. We have talked about everything from childhood trauma to getting back with your ex, and today is no different. We are talking about heartbreak and going through a breakup and kind of just how to go through it, how to move through it, and she gives amazing advice as always. So if you are going through a heartbreak or know someone going through a heartbreak, this episode is for you.
Okay, guys, we are about to record another amazing but also a heavy episode. And
Yeah.
obviously, we love this collaboration. We love to do fun episodes. Sometimes we have to do the heavy ones because, hey, life is about, feeling happy and sad and heavy, right? So we
Yeah.
want to be as real as it is for everyone listening to this. So thank you, Jonna, for, initiating this, coming up with the topic, and rolling with the questions.
Yeah, I think because a couple of weeks ago on the podcast I had mentioned like going through a heartbreak and like some people DM'd me and was talking about it too. And in that episode I was talking about it very like nonchalantly, I guess, like just very happy and whatnot. And I don't want to portray that because I had mentioned that this girl that I follow on Instagram like was just being very vulnerable and she was just being very open and honest, like crying on Instagram. And I just found that to be very like relatable. Like I wasn't like happy she was crying or going through something. I was just more so like, wow, like her life isn't all put together like I thought because she's this gorgeous, most beautiful girl. And, she's going through a hard time right now. And I think we all have to realize that we all go through a hard time. And
Yeah,
it's
realize
not,
that normalize, right? It's we've got
yeah,
to normalize this shit. I mean, it's just we just see the highlight reel all the time and we think
right.
people have it so good and people have it so amazing. They have this like big, beautiful White House and this like car and this wife or husband and everything is
Right.
put together, but we really, really don't know what's going on.
And you are the perfect person to like do this because you see this. Obviously, it's your job to coach people and to help them become the best versions of themselves. So you get to see, like, you've seen me at me crying and me at my worst. And like a lot of my deep insecurities and things like that, where obviously I'm not going to share all of that because some of that has to stay private. But like, you see this on a daily. So in your mind when you're walking around, like, this isn't all what it's cracked up to be, but like I feel like because I don't do that, like that is not my kind of work. I
Mm.
do buy into that and I do believe that everyone's just so happy and even though I know it's not, right? Like even though I know I have friends that literally are talking about divorcing their husbands, but then post a photo that they just went on the best day of their life last night.
Oh, that's so funny you say that. I was having a conversation with a client last week, and she was telling me how bad her relationship was with her boyfriend. And then I saw her post a bunch of photos. So I got curious and I was like, hey, I'm just a little curious as to, you seemed okay, on social media, but you're coming up with these problems. Like, why do you think a person does that? And then you know what she told me? I got real with her. And she was like, I think it's denial. I
Yeah.
think it's easier to do that than be like real on social media because we get a lot of judgment and we get a lot of comments and people start pitying us and nobody wants to feel pity. So I think it's easy for people to post happy pictures and spread positivity instead of negativity. And I was like, well, that's an interesting opinion that you say it's negativity when I look at it as realistic, it's real,
Right. Now, like
right?
I follow a podcast, The Giggly Squad, and they were talking kind of about this, like how girls recently, like the trend is to get on social media and cry.
Yeah,
Like nobody wants to see that either. Like, I mean,
right.
if it's genuine, like if you're telling a story and you happen to have emotion around the story, I think
Mhm.
that's more genuine than just like getting on TikTok and crying and being like day one of a breakup, day two of a like I don't understand that trend because, like, I'm not going to sit here and photograph myself crying and how long it took me to get over someone. Now, will I podcast about it when I'm officially over it?
Right.
Maybe.
Right, right. I really feel like it's at the end of the day, it's what they choose to reveal about themselves and how secure they are about their own emotions. And honestly, their judgment about it, right? It's
Right.
like they think, oh, being real on social media is negative, then they're not going to be real. They're only going
Right.
to be positive. They're only going to post the good parts about their life, and they're gonna like face the reality behind the screen, right? But I really hope one day that people are more real, so it gives energetic permission for others to do the same thing, and also for others to know that shit happens. Life is always not happy and giggly and fun and sunshines. It's like a lot of grief can happen to someone.
Right.
It's the ups and downs of a human life.
And we're going to kind of dive into a more, I guess, quote unquote, negative topic today. We're going to talk about heartbreak and breakups, whether that be divorce, or you're just been in a long-term relationship or even a short term. Like you might have just dated someone for 6 months and you fell really hard. And some people do, some people fall harder, some people guard themselves. And I kind of wanted you to help me navigate this topic because I tend to do that. I tend to fall really hard for people that I know maybe necessarily aren't the best for me, I think. Like logically, I think I know. And I know like when we work together, like you would even point out things, but then tend to romanticize it later and think it was a lot better than it was. So I guess I'm asking, like, I know other people do this too. So, like, first, like, why do we do that? Like, why? And I feel like, and I'm not saying men can't feel this way. I'm just saying I feel like a lot more women do this than men. I feel like when men are done, they're done.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, because I have some male clients, and I know for a fact that they're not done.
Well, they compartmentalize better. Let's just put it that way. They compartmentalize a hell of a lot better than women do.
Oh gosh. So to answer your question about romanticizing, I think it's so deep rooted for us women since childhood.
Right.
It's like us having sleepovers with our girlfriends and talking about marriage, talking about the kind of guy that we want to be with, talking about a first kiss, really romanticizing about everything, sharing intricate details. So it's a form of like bonding with your girlfriends. And then at the same time, as you do that for bonding with your girlfriends, you also tend to like think about it and romanticize about it, even when you don't have that partner. So I think romanticizing, it comes so much with inherently for a woman because of the conditioning and the society and all that from a very, very, very young age. And let's talk about movies and television shows. Like they
I was
don't
about
make
to ask you that. I was about to say, like, because I know you grew up in India. I don't know if y'all watch Disney and stuff like that, but like I've heard um a lot of other people like kind of dive into that topic where women watch Disney movies as kids, like, and you see the prince always rescuing the female, like Cinderella, Snow White, and
Yes,
it's never, it's always they're never, the woman is never happy until they meet their Prince Charming and they
right.
get married and it's happily ever, it's always at the end of it, happily ever after.
Right. So it used to be like that even in like films back home, right? But now it's so much better. Like now it's like they're showing how career matters for women. Now it's like people are finally waking up, right?
Right.
So they're,
Right.
they're showing that okay, there's other parts to a woman's life that's like equally as important as marriage or partnership, or sometimes even more important than a relationship. So now they're starting to make movies which are more like women empowerment and show that it's okay to have it all,
Yeah.
and sometimes even not be in a relationship or whatever. But I think for women, it's more inherent. That's the reason. And I think it's also normal to romanticize after a heartbreak. I think it's what the mind does. The mind, some days it'll be like, oh my God, we had all these like amazing moments and we had all these like da, 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 da. And then the other day it's like, fuck that shit, fuck him. Like he's a piece of shit. And it's like, and then the pendulum swings the other way. And then the pendulum swings the other way. So I think the best way to actually overcome that, if you ask the question, is to know that the pendulum is going to swing, right? So understanding your own mind that the pendulum is going to swing and not take any action. Do not take any action, guys. Like anybody that's, please don't take any action when you're romanticizing and then send a message saying, "Oh, I miss you so much," da 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 da. And then the next day you're like, "Fuck him," like, like screw him
Yeah.
and whatever. Like,
Because is it
yeah.
like that I'm really going through a heartbreak or am I bipolar? That's what
Yeah,
it feels like.
it feels, it will, Jonna. And the thing is, it really will feel like that. So I think normalizing that it will feel like that will give you a lot of relief
Yeah.
because um if you look at other people, maybe they're not talking about it in social media, but I can tell you everybody goes through that.
Okay.
If
So it's
they
pretty
have
normal.
it's very, very normal. One day to romanticize, the other day to hate, one day to romanticize, the other day it's anger and resentment, and then romanticize. It's like the pendulum is going to keep swinging. So the only way to overcome it is to let the pendulum swing and feel the emotion as it comes through to you, and then don't take action. Eventually, the swings will be a lot more manageable, and then slowly it'll stop.
So what if someone like me who has a difficult time identifying my emotions and I'm trying to like go through it? Like what is actually quote unquote going through the motions? Like is that allowing yourself to feel it without numbing out with things? Or is
Exactly.
that like is it like sitting there and like turn the TV off and actually have those thoughts come through?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Because, like, I'll give you an example, right? I actually have a client. Um, Obviously won't mention her name due to confidentiality, but I have a client who I've thought how to like go through these things because she's in a very like turbulent relationship. It's very like fights and then oh make up and then fights and then it's like that kind of relationship. And I've taught her a few things, which is not to, like I said, first, don't take any action and really like sit with it and feel it out. Don't try to watch TV. Don't try to call a friend. Don't try to numb it. Don't try to drink alcohol. Don't try to smoke weed. Like, don't try to do anything, but really just sit with it and think of the worst case situation, just hypothetically, right? Okay, if this happens, then what happens? Okay, if he doesn't respond to my message, okay, then what happens? Oh, then he'll lose interest. Oh, then what happens? Oh, then he'll eventually leave me. Then what happens? Oh, then we'll break up. Then what happens? Then I'll feel bad for a while. Then what happens? Oh, I'm still here. So
Right.
you're not dying. You're not you're not dying. Nobody is dying because you feel hard emotions because you're going through heartbreaks, right? Unless you're suicidal. And if you're suicidal, please seek help. This is not the episode for you. Seek actual help, right?
Right,
But if you're
right.
not suicidal and just feeling bad and awful and feeling miserable about the breakup, what's going to happen? You're not dead. You're still there. You're still living. You still have your job. You still have your friends. You still eat. You still work out. You still go through life, but things are just inconvenient now because that person is not with you. So sometimes I do this thing called exposure therapy, which is like go through it, like
Mm-hmm.
be there completely. So what? And then when I coach her through it, she'll be like, nothing. I'm okay. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So I think sometimes going to the worst case situation, living it, and then saying that, well, I'm still here. I'm still fine. I think that is very helpful for many people. I've seen that as I've coached people. I feel like that is extremely helpful for a person that can keep building on this negative narrative in their mind. And what if this happens? Nothing is going to happen. So for some people, they have to play out the whole scenario. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, that was my next question for you. Like sometimes, and I know you're talking about a scenario where it's like the actual scenario, like you have to play out like worst case scenario, like if you do choice A or B, what could come of those choices. But
Mhm.
let's talk about the stories that we build in our head, like when we're going through a breakup or something, like we then start blaming ourselves, or we're like, maybe if I would have done this better, we wouldn't have broke up, or we start like wanting to understand, or and sometimes I feel like maybe we can't understand. Maybe there is
Mhm.
no understanding because the only person that can give you that comfort is the person that's also hurting you.
Right. So I'm going to tell you in an approach that you would like this because I know you're a person that always likes to understand why.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why we build the stories in the first place is to achieve certainty. is to
Okay.
achieve security because we have no idea what that person is doing. We have no idea, maybe because we're not in touch with them, right? Hypothetically, I'm just saying, maybe we're not talking to them. We have no idea what they're going through. We have no idea what they're doing. So, in order to get certainty and security, we're building stories. We're saying, oh, maybe he's doing this. He's probably doing this. He's probably doing this. So, your mind is trying to achieve comfort by getting to certainty, which is knowing. So
Yes.
that's why we build the story. So once we understand why we build the stories, it's like, oh, this is for me to achieve certainty, but it's actually not real,
Right.
actually not true. The actual truth is, I have no effing clue
Right.
going on. And it's really scary for people to say, I don't have a clue or I don't know. So, because it's so scary for people to say, I don't know what that person is going through or whatever is happening in their lives, they build these stories.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is to sit with, I don't know what's happening. And I may never know what's happening. And maybe not knowing is giving me massive anxiety. Maybe not knowing is giving me a lot of grief. So if I have that massive anxiety and I welcome that anxiety and that grief right now,
Mm-hmm.
can I just cry? Can I just
Right.
sit with that? Will I still be alive if I sit with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's the hard part because when you feel it, like obviously it's painful and you try to do anything and everything to protect yourself from pain. I mean, it's the same as like we walk through life and I mean, you don't want to fall down on the sidewalk and hit your head and go to the hospital and get stitches. Like you try everything you can to walk around and not hurt yourself. So I guess you try emotionally to
Mhm.
not hurt yourself as well.
Right. Unfortunately, there's no way to do that.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I'm sure you would have seen this in quotes and other people say it. It's like anything what doesn't kill you makes you stronger,
Mm-hmm.
or something like you have to go through it to get through it. So the thing is, when you go through it, when you go through the grief, when you go through the sadness, and I'll talk about prevention in a second, when you go through the sadness, you're really giving yourself the permission that you can get through it, you're moving through it, and you're also like proving to yourself that I'm still alive, which means I'm stronger and I can go through it. So even if it happens again, I know how to go through it. I'm not afraid of pain. So there is a little bit of self trust that you're building with yourself in that process, right? So in order to prevent it, honestly, there is no way to fully prevent it. The only way to partially prevent it is to say or ask yourself, am I really here with how real it is right now, or I'm here with the story?
Right.
So it's really conscious effort. It's like, can I be real with what's happening right now? Or should I believe my story? Because believing your story, you can if you want. It'll give you temporary comfort or an illusion of comfort. But you know what's going to happen? Your mind is going to form another loop. It'll keep forming stories because at the end of the day, you don't know facts.
Right. And I was going to say, like, sometimes I know, like, with myself, like, I get stuck on a loop and then I would consider myself someone who has a really hard time moving on. And I'm sure that stems from childhood trauma. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's there. Like, I need to work on that more. And I don't know why I have such a difficult time moving on. Maybe I'm scared of the future. I don't know. I really truly don't know where that comes from. But
Right.
like if someone is getting stuck on a loop and they're is it more so like you're afraid to move forward or you're comfortable maybe in that
It's
feeling because
both.
that's what you know?
It's both. It's the unknown. It's the fear of unknown. It's
Yeah.
like, what's going to happen to me if I don't have grief? What's going to happen to me if I don't have pain? And then it's almost like it's so messed up because sometimes the subconscious mind protects you from like moving forward and it's like it's almost like saying be in the pain because you know it's familiar. You know it's something you can control. So it also has a little to do with control because
Okay.
if you're not in the pain and you overcome it, you don't know what you are after that. You don't know how life looks like in freedom or pain free. So you're saying I'll sit with it because it's familiar and this is something I can control. I can build the stories. I can say the stories are shit. I can build another loop. So it's control,
Yeah. Well, we know that from past previous episodes that
right?
I have control issues.
So I would say it's a lot to do with control, and it's also being afraid of the future. It's also being afraid of the unknown, which everybody is so afraid of the unknown. So they'd rather sit with the pain, they'll sit with the familiarity than move to the unknown. So the only way to do that is honestly find proof in how many times in life you have like put one foot into the unknown and it has not like gone bad. So
Right.
find proof that unknown doesn't mean I'm going to die. Unknown doesn't mean it's going to be bad. Unknown doesn't mean I'm going to get lost, right? So find proof from the past anytime you have shifted into the unknown and it has actually served you and done you good.
And
That
just hold
way,
on to that.
exactly, because the subconscious mind loves proof, loves proof. The more proof you can find that, oh, stepping into this is not so dangerous, because inherently human nature is to protect ourselves from danger,
Right.
which is the unknown, because unknown is considered as danger in human mind.
Right.
So you say, oh, by the way, I did this unknown thing. Like 3 weeks ago, I didn't know how this was going to turn out, and I did this, and nothing happened. I did this 4 months ago in this instance at work, and nothing happened. So finding proof of the unknown and saying that I'm still alive, no danger occurred, I'm still fine, and it actually turned out good. That is the best way to move through the unknown.
And I know like we all talk about like moving on, like
Mhm.
moving on. Is that really a thing? Do people really move on, or is it that you just, as time goes on and you work on it, you move past it and you learn to sit with it, but you never fully move on? Or can you fully move on? Like that's where I get confused because I have friends, like you said, don't ask your friends for advice, but sometimes
Yes.
I'll like if I'm talking to my friends about it, they're like, just get over it, just move on. And sure, that's a simple saying. Like it's easy to say, just
Easy
move
for people to
on.
say it, right?
But like
Exactly.
when you're stuck in it, like if you're the person stuck in it, because it's easy when people aren't emotionally involved in your story, how do you like, is that a thing? Like, does someone eventually move on? Like, do you stop automatically one day, think about your ex, or is it normal to sometimes have that ex pop up in your mind and be like, oh, it's less painful today, but I still kind of miss them?
I think really, if you want me to be very honest with you, I think moving on is subjective to each and every person.
Mm-hmm.
It's never the same for everyone. So anybody that says this is how moving on should be, like run in the other direction because that is not how it is.
Yeah.
Okay, it's very different. Like there are some people who never think about their exes and it'll randomly pop up and they'll just like shove it under the carpet, right? It's like, no, 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 I'm not going to think about you. Maybe that feels good to them. Some people don't think about it and then a song comes on the radio and they're boo-hooing. But that doesn't mean they're stuck in the past. That is a way of moving on. Like you're triggered and you're moving through emotions and it'll happen, but you're still going to do life. You're still going to run errands. You're still going to go to work. You are moving on, right? So it's like what feels to me, and professionally, I'll tell you this, what feels to me as not moving on is literally being in a funk,
Yeah.
literally sitting at home, not getting up, not going to work, not eating, like completely stuck is not moving on. If
Okay.
you're still getting up, you're still going to work, you're still talking to your friends, you're still doing your errands, you are still doing life, you are moving on with life, girl. You are doing it. Okay.
Okay.
Just because somebody has thoughts about their exes doesn't mean they're not moving on. It's the most natural thing.
Yeah.
Of course, you've invested your heart. We're talking heart connection, guys. Like if you've invested your heart and if you've really been in love, right? It will come and go. So can you hold space for that? Because you're not stuck and you're not going to work and you're not boohooing all day. You're still doing life.
Right.
Make space that whenever your heart thinks about that person, maybe you shed a few tears, maybe you think of a few memories, and then you still do life because I still think that's moving on.
Well, I mean, that's good to know because sometimes I feel like when people, not just me, like I have friends that'll do the same thing. Like if they're like, oh, this made me think of them, but they're still able to like carry on a conversation and then move past it.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that that still is moving on because like
Yes.
I have other friends where if you even mention an ex, they're like, oh my God, here we go again. Like, when are you going to get over it? And so it's like that two different dynamic, which you said it's subjective to everyone. So some of those friends where maybe you're having that conversation for the 20th hundred time. Like they're like in their minds are like, I'm so sick of hearing of this, you know?
Right. No, absolutely. I think it's also why do you feel it's almost like why do we feel the need to like talk to our friends, right? Talk to people that would really understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to people that would hold space for it.
Right.
Good questions to help you move through it, right? Not people that won't understand it because maybe they're at a different phase. Maybe they don't have the capacity to understand it, right? And
Right.
and I think it's also phases, Jonna. I think when the wounds are fresh, we tend to talk about it a lot more.
Yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
as time passes, we talk about it a little less. And then it'll pass, and then we'll talk about it a lot less. And then after a point, we just don't talk about it. We just, when it comes, we just process it internally. Maybe we'll cry, maybe we'll think about them, and then we'll move on. So I think giving it time and letting it be okay, letting anything be okay. I think that's where people like really fall short is like, oh, it has to be like this. It
Yeah.
has to be that. Well, who told you that? Who told you that? Who told you it has to be like this or that? So I think giving room for anything and everything and feeling anything and everything is actually the fastest way to move on. If you ask me the fastest way to move on, it's literally okay when you feel like crying, cry. When you feel like raging, like use some tools that we've discussed, or like punch a pillow. I really feel for me what has worked so well, and some friends have told me that, oh, you process things so quickly. And how do you do this? You process emotions so quickly. I write letters. That's my secret. I actually write letters. I don't send it to them. I
That's where
write,
I need to learn.
yes, I
I write
write
them and I
letters.
send them.
Oh, girl, do not send them because that again,
Delulu.
yeah, because that again is the pendulum, right? It's like,
Yeah.
remember I said, when the
Yeah.
pendulum don't take action.
Yeah.
So the fastest way for me is I'll just write things and then I'll burn it in the kitchen sink. Of course, be like really careful when you burn it. Safe.
Don't burn your house down.
Exactly, don't burn your house down, but just like write it, get that energy out. Because what is that? What is that that's like coming up? It's energy. It's just energy. And I know I'm geeking out about energy because I'm an energy healer and a life coach, but it is just energy that is wanting to be moved, right? What we're doing with our friends is we're getting that energy out by talking about our exes. We're getting that energy out by like venting about them or bitching about them, right? Write a letter. Don't send it, burn it, and that energy will actually, believe it or not, it'll be out.
Yeah, that's some good advice. And then one of the biggest things I think that some people, when I've experienced this with myself or with friends, they talk about closure and they're
Mhm.
like, I can't move on until I have closure. Like I need them to tell me that they don't like me, or I need them to tell me why, or whatever closure means for whatever whoever's listening. So, what do you feel about closure? And like, because I know that sometimes we don't get it. Like sometimes we have to give it to ourselves. And I actually heard a really good podcast. I was listening to Case Kenny's podcast on closure one day, and he was actually saying how for him, closure comes once you've moved on. It's not the other way around. Like you don't get closure, then move on. You move on, and then that gives you closure.
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think some people have closure immediately, maybe like cheating or doing something really drastic. Then they'll be like, oh hell no, like I'm so done. And then they cry it out and then they feel so awful for a few weeks and then boom, that's it, they're done. They've had closure and then they're moving on, right? Some people move on and then after a while they're like, now I feel really good about things, or I think I have closure. Like it's like that. So I think it's both.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, again, closure is also subjective. Right? I don't think it looks similar for everyone.
Yeah.
I think with some people, it's reasons as to why they broke up, like that can be closure. And with some people, it's just time that will give them closure,
Right.
right? And again, third option is to really see it for what it is. That wins the prize for me always. To
And
really
that's
see
the
it
hard part though, like, because we go back to the stories and we go back to like the romanticizing it. Like, how do you stay in the staying where, like, what it actually is? Like, how do you stay in that present moment of what it actually was when you miss this person so much that you
for.
do romanticize or you build these stories? Like how do you, because I feel like that's just natural human, like that's what we do, right? Like that's why a lot of people have this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, because you forget. It's almost like for example, for women who have babies. Like I've never had a baby, but I hear it's pretty painful. And then you
Mhm.
forget the pain and then you do it again.
Exactly, exactly. So it's really interesting. So the back and forth will happen. So there needs to be some acceptance there that the back and forth will happen, right? And then it's honestly, you're gonna like this answer because it's the same answer. I like to write it down.
Yeah.
I like to be like, why am I not with this person? Why didn't it actually work out? If I get out of my stories for like 5 seconds right now, and I can write down the real reasons as to why I'm not with this person, what are the reasons? And then I'll write it down. And then anytime, get this, anytime I go to the stories, I'll come back to my list.
Yeah.
I'll interrupt my pattern because the stories are fake, right? It's fake.
Right. Right.
Fantasy. It's like a movie. It's not real. So anytime I interrupt my own pattern, stories, I'll be like, no, let me go back to my list. And then I'll pull up the notes in my phone and then I'll go back to my list and be like, okay, I got
Yeah.
it. I got it. And I feel like that has always helped me move past things quicker
Hmm.
because I'm more real with why it didn't happen.
And how do you do that healthily without dismissing your own feelings? Like, for instance, like if I'm going through a heartbreak and I'm really, sad about it, or if I'm really like, you go through different emotions with it. You're like, you're sad, then you're angry. And
Mhm.
then, like I said earlier, like I feel like women tend to then blame themselves, or maybe if you do have a conversation with the person you broke up, maybe they've made statements like it was because of the fighting or it was because of this. And, when really it wasn't that, and the truth, but you keep blaming yourself. Like, how do you stop dismissing your own feelings about it?
I think it's also a process. I think there will always be a point, especially if somebody is in integrity. I'll say this is very important. Okay. Anytime you do that, I always want you to come back to integrity. Did I show up? Yes. Was I expressing love in the highest and best ways? Yes. Did I care for this person in the highest and best ways? Yes. Did I give my best in the highest and best ways? Yes. If you can check those boxes, then you're in integrity.
Because it's like there's nothing else you could have done.
There is nothing else you could have done. So I always say, come back to integrity. Come back to you. Come back to, did you take the efforts and the actions and did you have the right intentions? If you took the effort, if you took the action, and if you had the right intentions, you can set yourself free. It'll take some time, but eventually you'll set yourself free. Sometimes it's quicker. Sometimes it's a lot quicker, but you always have to come back to you and
Yeah.
not the story. Come back to you and come back to real and tangible things rather than the stories that's created by your mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like, and it's like, I guess logically we know these things, but when you're going through that painful point in your life, like you forget all of this stuff. So how
That's
do
why
you
I say
remember?
take notes.
Yeah,
That's
I was
literally,
gonna say, like, how do you remember to do it?
literally one of my clients, I'll tell you what one of my clients did. She wrote the lists of why they're not together or why he's not the one, and she pasted on her mirror.
That's good.
Literally, every single day, she'll like wake up and brush her teeth and she'll look at the list and she'll be like, okay, I got it. Of course, she didn't have to permanently paste it in the mirror. After like 1 or 2 weeks,
Yeah.
it got imprinted in her subconscious that, oh, I got it. I know the reasons now. So sometimes we have to remind ourselves. It's like, remember when we like, just remember when you were a child and your like parents asked you to brush your teeth, there was just so much fuss about it. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, do I have to do it? And then the third time, and then the fourth time, and then the 20th time, you already know you have to brush your teeth. It's like that for a lot of things.
Right. Right.
So
Now,
it's repeating patterns and until the pattern becomes normal.
and I think it also kind of goes back to what you said on a few episodes back where we were talking about getting back with an ex and we talked about scarcity mindset. I
Yeah.
think a lot of women, I do it myself. I know, like, I think we tend to romanticize or we tend to like build up that story in our mind because we have that scarcity mindset and we're like, oh, I don't want to go through this dating thing again because it's a lot. Like you have to go through the whole first steps again and you have to do all that and you don't want to do it and you've already spent all this time. And then,
Mhm.
the societal pressures of like the woman's time clock and all the things involved there. So I think that sometimes has an influence on it because you start to think there's no one better than what I had. Like maybe I did, make a fuss over something that shouldn't have been fussed about. And maybe I should have been a little bit more lenient. And then you start
Mhm.
kind of, again, dismissing your own feelings or start romanticizing what it should have been when the truth was, no, those were problems. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, I think it all comes back to being real. I
yeah,
think if you're, especially if you're listening to this, somebody that's listening to this that lives in the fantasy, right? Being realistic is going to be ugly for you. I'm going to be really honest. It's not going to be a pretty process in the beginning, but I promise you it'll set you free from your own stories. It may
right.
be really hard in the first week when you do it. When you make that list and read that list, it's going to be really painful. You're going to want to go back to the stories. And so, even to the scarcity mindset, right? The scarcity mindset. And again, it doesn't have to be you have to get back in the game. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
It doesn't
Right.
take time to be single. Take time to enjoy the things you couldn't when you were in a relationship. Get into more hobbies, go to classes, hang out more with your friends, join meetup groups, join social groups, like hang out with people. I feel like the best way to overcome a breakup is actually to learn a new skill, learn a new
Yeah.
language, learning a new skill, hanging out with different people, doing different things. If you have social anxiety, learn a new skill, like just completely learning something totally different from what you've learned now. It'll consume your energy, it'll consume your life, and you'll be like, yes, redecorate your house, get creative. Doing things like that will really help your mind stay focused on something else and also be creative in that process. So it's not like you're not stuck in the process, you're creative in the process. And that will help you stay occupied when you are single instead of, oh, I need to get back in the game. I need to like date right now. You don't have to. You'll
What do you,
date when you're ready.
I was gonna say, and what do you feel about that? Like, how do you feel about people just jumping right back into the dating game? Because what's the saying? Like, to get over someone else, you have to get under someone else or something like that. Like, but I've never been that type of person because I feel like I date intentionally and I don't want to be not healed, which I know you're never fully healed before you, like, what am I trying to say? So, like, some people say you should not date until you're fully healed, but sometimes that's not the case, but I also don't want to go straight into dating with like a fully broken heart because I don't want to hurt someone else because what if that person calls that broke my heart and I'm not really done with them yet and I run back to them, then I've hurt this person that I'm now dating because I was using them to get over my ex. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I know there's like a catch 22 there and there's like that is in itself a whole topic.
I think it depends on the person. I think it really depends on the person. If you're somebody that's listening and you feel like, oh, with one phone call, you're going to go back to your ex, then you're not ready to date someone else. You're not. You have to process your breakup. You have to understand why you're not together. You have to look at the tangibles of why that person is not a good fit for you and you're not a good fit for that person. And unless you really understand that, don't date, right? I don't have a straight answer for this. Some people move on quickly,
Mm-hmm.
they process things with the new partner because the new partner is so understanding that they can hold space for that. They know that they're coming off a breakup, and they can hold space for that and they both can heal and grow together. I've seen situations that happen like that. Sometimes people say, oh, I've taken a lot of time and this has helped. So I think even that is subjective.
Which,
Because
yeah, it definitely is. Like, I know that there's like everyone does everything differently. I just personally am not someone that wants to hurt someone else. And maybe I take it a little too extreme because I'm like, I need to be fully healed. And
And
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
that's a
it's even
thing
hurting, Jonah. I don't think it's even hurting. I think your pendulum is swinging really extreme when you say that, right? What if the new person says, hey, I know that you went through a breakup. I will help you, like move through that if anything comes. Like I'm holding space for it.
because I've
I'll
been in
like,
that situation. And I think that's trauma for me because I've been in that situation where they said they would hold space and they didn't.
mm,
And then they used it against me about
mm,
that person. And I was just like, oh
yeah,
my God. Like,
right. So you obviously want to pick somebody that's secure enough
right.
that's secure enough to hold space for that. So I would say it's subjective to you, it's subjective to that person, depending on who you pick. There's so many things we need to consider here, right? If you want to like get together with somebody immediately after you've broken up with someone. But I think the most important thing in this process is, why did you break up? Why is it not a good fit? I think the reality has to sink in, whether you're giving yourself time or whether you're dating someone immediately. I think that process has to be done either ways.
Yeah. And I mean, if you were going to say like in a perfect world, if you're coaching someone and they're going through a breakup, would you lean more towards like saying like, why don't you process and heal a little bit before you go dating so that you're not traumatizing someone else?
I would, I would, I would, I
I was
would,
like, which I mean, I know it's not a perfect world, but I'm saying like in a perfect world, if you could coach someone a specific way and they listen to everything you said.
yeah, I would absolutely say give it some time. And then I would say, what were your triggers in the past relationship? What were your insecurities in the past relationship? What were your wounds in the past relationship? Let's actually sit and heal through these wounds. And once you feel like you've healed through most of it and you feel stable, you feel good, and you've reestablished self-trust, then let's get back in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I have a hard time getting back in the game, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. What do you, and I guess the last question I have for you on this topic is someone had asked, like, how do you move on when the other person may seem like they really don't care? Maybe they're not showing remorse. Maybe they've seemed to like already checked out and moved on, which I know everyone's timeline is different, but which I, and I know we shouldn't compare our timeline to the other person that we've been dating, but how would you advise on that?
I think that's also a story. That's
Yeah.
also a story. How do you know that they're not, there's no remorse there? How do you know? Are you like, do you have a CCTV camera inside their mind? Do you have a CCTV camera inside their heart? Like,
Right.
you don't. So you don't know.
Well, some people are really good at acting like they don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if they're acting, then okay, good for them. But I think the reality always comes down to, do I have facts? Do I have facts? Do I have facts? Did that person actually tell me that they've moved on? Did that person actually tell me that they have no remorse? Do I know this completely for a fact that this is the case? And if the answer is a no, then I think coming back to the unknown again, I don't know. I don't know that this is true. I don't know, but my mind is creating stories that it is. Or based on social media, my mind is creating all these scenarios that it is. But I
Hmm.
don't know if they have any remorse just because they seem like they're living their life, just because they're posting stories. It doesn't mean it's true. I post stories when I'm sad. That doesn't mean,
Same.
yeah,
Same.
exactly. You post, I mean, you just posted something of you working out. Does that mean that you're living your best life?
Right. Right. No, I got my ass up and I went to the gym to build a booty.
Exactly.
I'm not building a
Exactly.
bay anymore. I'm building a booty.
Exactly. You see what I'm trying to say? It's like that doesn't mean that you're not going through sadness here and there. That doesn't mean that you're not going through, trauma here and there. So I think everybody can assume, like somebody can look at your stories and be like, oh my God, look at her moving on. Dang.
Yeah.
Like you can do that. So I think if we want to sit and assume, we can sit and assume all day long. If we
Right.
want to create stories and gossip about it, we can sit and create stories and gossip about it all day long over popcorn and tea, right?
Well, I mean, even better yet, yesterday was probably one of the hardest days that I've had in a while. And I posted a story when I was on the way to book club with the girls. Like I was just because I had my hair done and my makeup done, and I was just like, I'm just so
Exactly.
happy. And I was just
Yes.
crying 2 hours ago.
Yeah, but my point is, Jonna, like you're still living your life. You
Right.
didn't cancel your book club. You didn't cancel your hair appointment. That tells me that you are moving on.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I mean, when you say it like that, it does. But then, when I'm in my head about it, I'm just like, I'm not moving on because I'm still sad and I'm still over here thinking about it and I'm still trying to process,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess maybe I'm putting too much restrictions on myself and I'm like, I
Yes, you are.
should be over this. Like
Exactly. It's like
there
should
should be
be the
I
should
should,
be's and the could be's. The
this,
should be's and the could be's are
this
like
timeline, like,
exactly.
the timeline should look like this.
Yep.
It
Yep.
it should look linear when it's like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down.
It's never linear. Breakups don't make sense. It's never linear. Like it's never been linear. So I think giving yourself grace that, okay, today I woke up and today I have all these plans. And today, here and there, I may think of this person. And is that okay? Am I still going to be alive? Yes, I am. Am I still going to go to the book club? Yes, I am. Am I still going to go to work? Yes, I am. Am I still going to go out with my coworkers? Yes, I am.
Right.
So I think it's just living through it and being okay if sometimes it snakes here and there and not making it mean anything.
That's the hardest part is not
Yeah.
making it mean anything because like I said, you get caught up in your own head. It's in my damn head, let me tell you, I need a lobotomy. I've been making up some wild ass stories in this head. Maybe I have too much time on my hands that I just be making shit up in my head.
Or maybe you're just a natural storyteller.
LA, call me. I got some movies for you. I got some ideas.
Exactly. It's like you're just a natural storyteller. You're just so creative in your head.
Or bipolar. Who knows?
Oh my God,
I'm just
girl.
kidding, guys. I'm not bipolar.
It's literally everyone. Everybody does that. Everybody goes through that. And I think it's just fragile, you know? I think there's phases.
Yeah.
And if the wound is too fresh, we love to create stories because we, like I said, why do we do that? To get certainty, to
Right.
get security, to know, to give that false illusion. It's an illusion. I mean, not a false illusion, illusion. It's an illusion of security, is what it is.
And I know I told you the book I read, the Love Life by Matthew Hussey, and I said this a couple weeks ago on the podcast that he said, and I know you'll agree with this. And he said that we really don't grow in life until we have the most painful parts that happen to us. Like pain is actually a very good growing
It
part.
is. It is. Yeah.
But
I'm
you have to work on it to grow. Like you have to like be self-reflective. You have to realize like what you did wrong too. You can't just blame the other person all the time. You have to take some responsibility in your own heartbreak and being like,
absolutely.
this is where I messed up and this is where I don't want to take that into the future. And I
Yeah.
learn, you learn about yourself through painful parts in
Oh,
your life.
1000%. Like if I look back at my life and I looked at some of the most painful things, I know it sounds crazy right now, but I wouldn't change a damn thing because
Right.
it really shaped me as to who I am right now. It made me a better person. It made me a better friend. It's making me a better coach every single day because I can reflect on my own stories when I coach other people. You know, it really it's being of service to the entire world because I can reflect on my pain and I can say this is how I participated in the pain and this is how I can do it better the next time. So definitely everybody has a contribution. Like if you're looking at it and saying it's all their fault, they did this, it's all them, then three fingers are pointing at you and one finger is pointing at them. I'm sorry, like there is some part in you.
Well, even if you're in a relationship where like I'm trying to think of a good example. Like if you're in a relationship where anything but abuse, right? Like if someone's abusing you, then no, no one deserves that. I don't care what you do, no one deserves that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But like if you're in a relationship where there's a lot of bickering and arguing, I guess maybe that's a good example,
Mm-hmm.
and you keep going back to the person, then the responsibility you have to hold is that you are allowing it
Exactly.
and you're
You are,
not speaking up and you're not saying like I will not tolerate this. So like maybe no, like maybe you were talked to in such a way, but
yeah.
it's also your responsibility to not allow the way like in a professional manner, in a respectful manner. There's ways to handle that without like screaming at someone. But
Oh,
I'm just trying to like I I've learned by now on podcasting, I don't do well with examples because I don't write them down. And then I try to think about them off the top of my head. I'm like, what's a good example right now? What would fit the mold?
yeah. No,
I
no, no. I
think
get it.
examples down.
I know what you're talking about. It's so interesting you say that. And I think it also depends on the person. I feel like some people are okay with bickering. Like I used to date this guy who thought that was extremely normal to have fights like 2, 3 times a week. Fights is a part of a relationship. And my nervous system was like, no, bitch, get out. Like this is not normal, you know? And it really affected my nervous system. And then the second I was out, I felt so much freedom.
Yeah.
So much
Which I mean,
freedom.
I think that also comes from your childhood. Like I grew up in a family like with a family that just
Yes.
argued all the time.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
became very argumentative and it was
Right,
a part of
right.
my personality, which I'm trying my best to fix. Like I'm trying but again, with my personality and like me being inquisitive and asking why, it can come
Mhm.
across as being argumentative. Like, oh,
Right,
why did you do something? And someone's like, well, what do you mean? Why did I do it? Like, and then it
right,
becomes like a whole thing when that's not what I meant and my intentions
right,
were not that,
right,
you
right.
know.
I think communicating intentions will be really useful for you. You know, like even before you ask the question and say, hey, my intention is not to attack you. My intention is to get curious and understand where you're coming from. Even that will be helpful, right? And so you like hit the nail on the like wall, literally. It's how you grew up. It's like what's normalized. Like I didn't grow up in a household where my parents fought all the time.
Right.
They fought sometimes, but they didn't fight all the time. So I'm not used to that much conflict. So if there's too much conflict, guess what I'm gonna do? Run.
And see, and it's normal for me. So like I stay in conflicting relationships probably a little bit farther too longer than I maybe should. Because I'm like, oh, well, this is normal, which it is normal to disagree and to argue in a relationship. Let's normalize that. Like there is no such thing as someone who
That's very normal.
not,
Exactly.
yeah, like
Yep.
there is not one couple on this earth that doesn't have an argument. I think it's just the
Absolutely
way
not.
you handle it. And like you said,
Exactly.
holding space for the other person and their feelings. Like I'm not the best at it. Like even when I have a disagreement with my aunt, and if she listens to this, sometimes she listens, sometimes she doesn't. She'll even agree, and I'll do it with you. I've done it with you. Like I may disagree with a friend in that moment because it's heated and
Right.
it's fresh, but I
Right.
always think about it when I leave, and I come
Right.
back with like, well, damn, you were right. Usually, 9 out of 10 times, I was the wrong one in that moment.
Right.
Or
And
if I wasn't wrong, I expressed it in the wrong
exactly.
manner.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's not even right or wrong. It's just things can be heated at the moment. And then later on, you reflect on it. And I think I encourage everybody to do this, right? It's like reflect on what you said. It's not that this person is wrong and I'm right. Reflect on what you said was right too. Like, because I think even everything has a room for improvement. Everybody has a room to improve, right? So I think that's what I would like to conclude.
No, I appreciate you doing this topic with me because I had a few DMs after my last one where they were like, "Why haven't y'all talked?" Well, we've talked about getting back with an ex. We've talked about like, but we haven't talked about like actually navigating and moving through a heartbreak.
Right. No, I'm so glad. Thank you so much for bringing this up. And I really hope this helps anybody that's like going through heartbreaks or building a story in your head that it has to look a certain way. Like, no, screw all that. It can be the way you want it to be. And I'll
And it
give you
takes as long as it takes.
it takes as long as it takes. For some people, it's a few weeks. For some people, it's a few months. So what? You are still going to live your life. You're not in bed, not moving, crying. You're not. You are moving on. Maybe the process of you moving on looks different. And it's not like somebody's highlight reel on their stories. Like, guys, don't tune into that. It's all fake. It's literally called social media for a reason.
No, I love it. Thank you so
Right?
much, Meenu.
Yeah,
As always, you always do a
absolutely.
fabulous job articulating what I'm trying to say. It's like you know how to like be like, okay, we got it. It's the Jonna euphemisms. Let me just interpret what she's trying to say.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad we did this. And I'm so glad we were able to break it down to the smallest detail. So guys, if you know anybody that's like going through a heartbreak or breakup, like send this episode, to them. And if you loved, our collaboration, our episodes, like go to our channels, please leave us a review. It will take you 5 seconds so that we can keep doing more of this. And Jonna is Babbles Nonsense, and I am Transcend into Wellness. So tune in for more collaborative episodes on all things babbles and all things nonsense because we literally talk about everything. We talk about everything. I don't think there's anything we haven't talked about. So
Right. And if y'all have more topics, send them our ways. We love like when
yeah,
people suggest topics because then we're like, ooh, that's a good one.
exactly. Yeah, I sometimes like take topics from my client sessions. Sometimes people DM me, but feel free to like send us if you want us to cover something. And thank you again for tuning in. And we will see you guys really soon.
All right. Bye, guys.